Thank you for coming out tonight to hear Dr. McCloskey speak. Just like to give a short introduction.
Say, before you start, have you got a microphone that I can carry?
No, we don't. I think I can go and try and find one if you'd like, though.
Yeah, why don't you go try after a while?
All right. Deirdre McCloskey taught at University of Illinois in Chicago from 2000 to 2015 in economics, history, English, and communication. A well-known economist and historian and rhetorician, she has written 17 books, with a new one coming out in May, and around 400 scholarly pieces on topics ranging from technical economics and statistical theory to transgender advocacy and the ethics of bourgeois virtues. She is known as a conservative economist, Chicago school style. She taught in the economics department there from 1968 to 1980 and in history, but protests that I'm a literary, quantitative, postmodern, free market, progressive, Episcopalian, Midwestern woman from Boston who was once a man. Not conservative, I'm a Christian libertarian. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Deirdre McCloskey.
Thank you very much, dears. I'll try to use it this way. I move around a good deal. Okay, can you hear me at the back if I talk this way? Is this being recorded?
Yes.
It is? Okay, then I need to talk into here.
No, I think you should be all right.
You think it's okay? Well, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to tell you tonight how we got so rich. And let's start with that. We are rich. I don't mean just the people in this room, but the world is rich by comparison with its history, long history. Some parts are more rich than others, but that's changing. Countries like China and India are growing in income per head very fast. And in a couple of generations, maybe 3, we'll have a European standard of living. So the question is how that happened. And in a way, it's the biggest question in the social sciences and in modern history. How growth happened. Now, there are conventional answers to this, which aren't persuasive. And then there's my answer, which is. All this comes from a trilogy, 3 books. The first is The Bourgeois Virtues, Ethics for an Age of Commerce, in which, this was published in 2006, in which I inquire whether or not you can have an ethical life and still participate in an economy. Or is being in an economy hopelessly corrupting? Is it just terrible to buy low and sell high? Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, said, "Don't talk to me about profit. Profit is a dirty word." Mahatma Gandhi, the great liberator of India, said, the notion of buying low and selling high is the worst ethical principle there is. I argue, and by the way, I have a speech defect. If I stutter, don't worry. 2% of the born men in this room and 0.5% of the born women are stutterers. Churchill, you've got a statue of him around here somewhere. Churchill was a stutterer. Marilyn Monroe, I'm stuttered. Lots of people, I do. And this book criticizes that view. It says, on the contrary, it is possible to have an ethical capitalism. I don't much like the word capitalism for reasons I'll explain in a moment, but let's go with it for the time being. Bourgeois Virtues, Ethics for an Age of Capitalism, of Commerce, cheap on Amazon.com. All these books make wonderful Christmas, birthday, Chinese, New Year's, Hanukkah. Your mom and dad, especially your mom, would be delighted to get this trilogy under the Christmas tree. So that's the executive summary of this first book. Now it's a long book, it's 500 pages. And this executive summary is no excuse for not buying the book. You don't have to read it, but you have to buy it. Volume 2, and in this trilogy I was learning, it's a good idea if you're going to write a book to keep learning. And in fact, it's quite a learning experience. So my ideas evolved. This book is called Bourgeois Dignity, published in 2010. Why Economics Can't Explain the Modern World. Now, I'm an economist. I've been an economist since I was 18 years old. And I love economics. And I was a socialist and a Keynesian and a social engineer. These are all things that contradict each other. A Chicago School economist, an Austrian economist, an anarchist. I've been everything, almost everything. So I'm not against economics. This is not an anti-economic book. But it is a book that says the conventional arguments don't work very well. That the usual way that economists think about economic growth is wrong. And I go through the kind of structure of the book is to say what doesn't work. It's one way that science works. It does work. You eliminate a bunch of possible explanations for cholera, and that's what's left is made more plausible. If you have a germ theory, if you think that cholera is caused by pooping in your drinking water, and no one believes it, then you say, well, maybe it's caused by miasma, smelly air. Then you show that's not true. Maybe it's caused by social class. Poor people get cholera, rich people don't. You show that's not true. And then you can finally, as a famous doctor in 1850 did, you could show that cholera is caused by drinking poop. Sorry about the barnyard talk. The third volume is even longer than these. These are each 500 pages. It's 750 pages. It practically killed me to do the index over December, because a long book, my penalty, my Episcopalian God's penalty for making such a long book is I had to do a very, very, very long index. Well, I was trying to help my mom move into an old age community, and oh my God, my December in Naples, Florida was not nice. All right, and the third then goes into the reasons for why ideas changed. The title of the third book is Bourgeois Equality. How ideas, now hear it, not capital or institutions, enrich the world. How ideas, not capital or institutions, enrich the world. What do I mean by that? Well, some easy examples are ideas like a separate condenser for a steam engine, or the float process for glass, or looms that can make enormous pieces of this very attractive carpet you have here. Or saws, powers. It starts with circular saws, the end of the 18th century, moves to bandsaws in Sweden. Bandsaws to make pieces of wood like this. That's one level of ideas, and a very similar level is the level of institutional invention, the stock market. The modern university, such as you have here, where teaching and research are mixed. That's a modern idea, it's a very new idea, and it was consequential. It made us rich. In fact, if you look around this very room, well, no, look, here's a great example. I love this example. It came to me about 6 months ago. Dropped ceilings. See? Look, dropped ceilings. What's the advantage of a dropped ceiling, except for making the place shorter? Well, you can put all the utilities up there, and you can easily get to them to fix it. If you put them in the concrete that this floor is made of, you got to use a drill and a jackhammer to fix the plumbing or electricity. Whereas you put it up there, you can have the air conditioning, the lights, the fire things, and blah, 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 blah. It's all very nice. Drop ceiling. It's a very simple idea, but you got to have, in this case, plastic. In some other cases, I'm not quite sure what regular type drop ceilings are made of, but they're some sort of composite stuff that's made in squares, and you put it on this frame of steel. But you have to have cheap steel. We didn't have cheap steel until the middle of the 19th century. So cheap steel combined with stuff makes drop ceilings that makes the maintenance of buildings vastly cheaper. And so it goes. You look all around. Wood, like I said, is an important case because if you've ever been to Scandinavia, you know that they love wood because that's where it comes from. They make everything of wood, and they were very inventive in wood technologies of various kinds. Electricity, the microphone. Microphones, in my experience, don't work about a third of the time. And I wish you'd get your engineer cousins or something to fix this technology. It's very irritating. It's one of our older electronic technologies. That's one level of ideas. But what made for this explosion of ideas after 1800? What made for it? My friend Matt Ridley talks about ideas having sex. And you get the idea of carts on rails, which they used in coal mines in the northeast of England. And you add, now let's see, high pressure steam engine. Oh yeah, that's good, that'll be good. And then you get a railway. So that's two ideas having sex, out of which comes some baby ideas, and grandbaby ideas, and great-grandbaby, and they all have sex together. They're all madly having sex. And it's not the sex part that matters, it's the reproduction part that matters. They're making ideas out of ideas. And you can just see that all around you. The melding of ideas that has so enriched us. But why did it start happening in 1800? Because it didn't happen earlier. I have a way of expressing this. I'll move off of the microphone for a moment. I'll shout louder in the hopes that the microphone catches me. And I'll say, suppose we go back to the beginning of Homo sapiens. The only race there is the human race, and everyone here is a member of it. And suppose we talk about $3 a day as the income of the average person through most of history. Now, $3 a day is not inconceivable. $3 a day is not very much. You can't buy most cappuccinos for $3 a day. You don't get anything else. No food, no shelter, no clothing, no education for sure at $3 a day. $3 a day is very poor. And you'd say, oh, come on, no one can live on $3 a day. Yeah, they do in Bangladesh. They do in Nepal. They do in Zimbabwe. $3 a day right now. So you start back at the beginning of Homo sapiens, 200,000 years ago. And then my finger, see this finger? It has magic scientific qualities. You know, like a great concert pianist, she has the music in her hands, they say. That's me. I have the economic history in my finger, and it can do scientific diagrams very accurately. And so it goes, there it is. It goes along at $3 a day. We're back at 200,000 years ago. And it goes along at $3 a day, $3 a day. That's the present, the door is the present. $3 a day, miserable $3 a day, hunter-gatherers, nothing much else. Oh. About here, we have the agricultural revolution. Oh yeah, hey, that's much better. No. Because when you have the agricultural revolution in 9 different parts of the world, it didn't start in Iraq only, it started all over the place. You get more people. That's real reproduction. And more people push against diminishing returns, and you're back to $3 a day. $3 a day, $3 a day, $3 a day. Now, look, you have to see this. It's a very important scientific diagram. Here we are at 1800, about here. 1800, only 2 centuries ago. Now watch. It's very important that you hear it. It goes like this. You hear that sound? That's the scientific part. It goes up at an astonishing rate. So now, average per capita income in the United States, in the same dollars, is $130 a day. From $3 to $130. And that's true of rich countries around the world. In Japan, it's about $90 a day. In Britain, it's about $110 a day. In Norway, the land of some of my ancestors, it's $150 a day. This is a fantastic change. And it should color all of our thinking about social change and how society works. Because if we know what caused this, we can keep doing it. And we can bring it to the poor countries of the world. There's no racial reason why Sub-Saharan Africa should have lower income than Europe. In fact, there's a racial reason why Sub-Saharan Africa should have most of the top poets, mathematicians, historians, athletes, musicians in about 100 years. When Sub-Saharan Africa gets rich, Sub-Saharan Africa has dramatically more genetic variability than any other human group, because all the rest of us came out of Africa starting about 70,000 years ago, but then in dribs and drabs. My people and many of the people in this room went out of Africa, turned left, went to Russia, turned left again. But because of that, genetic material was lost. So the shortest people in the world and the tallest people in the world, naturally, are Sub-Saharan Africans. So Africa is going to be the great creative center of world civilization in 100 years. So there's no reason why this can't happen everywhere. There are reasons now why Africa is not doing well and why some other parts of the world are not doing well, like Latin America, but still, it's not permanent. So the question is, why this explosion of innovation? Because it is innovation. It's not, here, I'm going to bring the chair out so occasionally I can sit down. I had my hips operated on, which is a wonderful operation. Speaking of technological change, speaking of what the Austrians call discovery, when your grandparents, maybe great-grandparents, because I could be your grandparent, but when your great-grandparents got arthritis in their hips, they were finished. They ended up in a chair, they didn't exercise, they died. That was the standard pattern. Now you get arthritis in the hips, and my advice to you young people is if you're going to get arthritis, make sure it's in the hips. Because they can Now it's become completely routine. They can take out your hip joints and roll away the arthritis, and then put in new joints with titanium. But I have to sit down every once in a while and sew. So, why did this burst of innovation happen? And it gives every sign of continuing. Robert Gordon has a new book where he says, oh, things are going to get worse. Oh, things are exhausted. And it's just silly. I mean, how does Bob know? How would you know such a thing? And in fact, economists repeatedly have said, innovation is exhausted. We've got cotton textiles, we've got cheap steel, that's it. There's no more. And then they invented the electric motor and progress through chemistry. And then they said, oh, everything's over. And then they had the transistor revolution and the printed circuit revolution. They said, oh, now they're saying, whoop, everything's over, we're finished. America is never going to grow again. And then we developed biological inventions of all kinds. So it's been said before that this is over, that it's just going to happen once, that this innovation is very limited. It's not. Why? Why did it happen? My claim in the third book, see, I finally got it, finally figured out, is that in the 18th century, in what's called the Anglosphere, England, the United States, Canada, people started to regard each other as equals in two ways. Equal before the law, that's elementary, and socially equal. Now, I don't want to get too carried away here. So I'm talking about the slave-holding United States of America. There are a little bit of a problems with Thomas Jefferson writing about all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then he turns, hey, bang, and hits them with a whip. Now wait a second, that's not quite right. Actually, Thomas Jefferson didn't even free his slaves after he died. George Washington did it. So I'm a little dubious about Tom. But still, the idea was by then conventional among advanced thinkers in northwestern Europe especially. In Holland, in England, Scotland, the North American continent. Not North Continent, the North American English colonies. And not just equality before the law, but equality of dignity. When Tocqueville went to the United States in 1832, one thing this French aristocrat immediately noticed is that Americans looked at him, how can I say this, as though they were equal to a French aristocrat with a 500-year-old family. They didn't, pull their forelocks or do their curtsy or anything. They felt as dignified as Tocqueville. At least the white, free, male, non-immigrants did. And it's not perfect, but it's getting more perfect. Anyway, this equality meant this two-pronged equality before the law and in social standing resulted in everyone having a go, as the English say. Everyone having the chance and the emotional energy. If you don't think you're a serf and you don't act like a serf and you think, well, I could make a cotton textile machine. That other guy, he's not so smart. I'm going to make one. That attitude became very widespread. In Sweden, too, and lots of other places. And gradually spread. This idea of equality. Here's the magic word. The magic word, now this is going to surprise you maybe, because the word has been played with a lot and is not very well understood. Liberalism. Liberalism is the cause of our riches and our freedoms. But liberalism, not in the American, the kind of silly American sense where it's a synonym for socialism. That's just a crazy way of talking. It's liberalism, which is the theory that people should be equal before the law and equal in social standing. That's what liberalism, the sort I espouse, and my books espouse. That's the kind of liberalism that I care about and that I want you to care about. And the point I'm making as an economist is that that's what inspirited the population. Now you can sort of come at this in various ways. You could say, well, it was an increase in entrepreneurship. Well, that doesn't work so well by itself. If you increase the number of entrepreneurs by 50%, that's not going to result in a factor of 30 or 100. The entrepreneurship has to be extremely widespread. And the only way to get that is having a liberal society. You can't get lots of people having a go, trying things out, without a liberal society. A long time ago, there was an exhibit at the Wisconsin Historical Society. I saw it. This was a long time ago. It was more like 40 years ago. And there was a wall, I don't know, about the size of that bay there. A wall, I mean, at the time in the 19th century, Wisconsin was a big fruit-growing state, not just cheese. So fruit. And there was a wall of cherry pitters. Little devices, little and big devices for taking the pits out of cherries. Because, you know, if you want to have a cherry, you just you don't have to spit out the pit. It's more convenient, and you can make cherry juice, and you can use the cherries in cooking better. You don't want to do a cherry pie where you're always breaking your teeth on the pit. You want to pit it. Pit it. There were 300 cherry pitters. What's going on here? Well, these farmers in the winter in Wisconsin growing cherries, cherry trees, had nothing else to do in the winter. That's the big advantage of not being a dairy farm. They didn't have to work all the time. And all winter long, they bent themselves to thinking of more and more crazy ways of taking the pit out of cherries. Until we had 300. And a few succeeded commercially. It's like evolution. In fact, economics inspired Darwin. It's like evolution. You get a bunch of people who think they're as good as anyone else because they live in a liberal society that values people equally and that frees them from legal inequality, and they start going nuts inventing things. And that's what happened. That's what happened. That's what's happening now in India. India is, unlike China, is a democracy. So the Indians have solved the problem that the Chinese still haven't solved. The Chinese are run by the Chinese Communist Party. And you know the old story, the old proverbial story of riding the back of the tiger. As long as you're riding the back of the tiger, everything's cool. You're whipping along and